I want to talk to you about Jordan Peterson.
Please.
I'm enormously pleased for his existence. I'm glad about his existence. I think that it's lovely to see somebody else being successful on territory that we know and love and have and work in ourselves. I worry a little bit for him because I don't think he sees what's coming for him. But he doesn't realize the fall he's being set up for at the moment, and I'm not sure how well he's going to deal with it because he seems like a nicer person than us. My problem with him is this: I don't understand half of what he says. I don't understand what he's saying. I'm a very smart, very expensively educated person. And I'm not like, I was never top of my class because I was too lazy and whatever, but it's fairly obvious that I'm like a smart person. And I read a lot. I read books about the French Revolution for fun. You know, like I'm not an idiot. I just don't understand half of what he fucking says. And when you're talking about Plato, Aristotle, or whatever, like I get it, I understand. I'm like, yeah, I remember that from school. Oh, yeah. You know, like I get it. And even if I don't know what you're talking about prior to the fact, or if I never heard it before, I understand it. Because you talk about, you know, many of the same issues and some of the same philosophers, some of the same concepts in a way that I get. And I don't know what people are getting from him that they don't get from you, probably nothing, but there's just sort of, help me to understand the Jordan Peterson thing, because is it just that people are sort of trying to work out what he's saying, and if it's that arcane and mysterious and Byzantine, then it must be profound? Is that something of what's going on? Because I've noticed that happen with other public figures. And I want to couch all this by saying I'm really happy that he exists and I like him, he's great, all the rest of it. But I'm just like, if I don't understand half the sentences that come out of his mouth, what on earth are the rest of America like getting from this?
Well, and you would also be very, very well educated in Christian theology and primary myths and
literally all the stuff he talks about.
Yeah,
and I have to work really hard to pass the sentences. You know, sometimes when he's on stage and he's like rambling about some myth or some fairy story or whatever, that something about bunnies or whatever it was, and it's like 15 minutes, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm trying. Honestly, I'm not saying this to be difficult. I just don't fucking understand the guy. I don't know what he's saying. Do I just not speak Canadian? I don't. As someone who knows both philosophy and Canadian, help me out. What am I missing?
Well, so for the philosophy side, you kind of got to, so the reason I always work to try and be as comprehensible as possible is you got to start with your first principles.
To great success.
Yeah. Like, I mean, non-aggression principle and private property rights, free markets, free speech, like all the stuff. It's actually kind of a limited set that you're working with as a philosopher, and that's good.
Right.
You know, you're kind of working with a limited set.
No, and
as
you watch a lot of your videos, and you hear the same phrases because it's that essential toolkit.
Yeah.
You know, it's your socket wrench, your spanner, your hammer. Like you're using that core toolkit and applying it to various problems.
You've got paint and you've got a paintbrush, but it's what you do with it all. So for me, it's all about starting from the first principles and kind of radiating out from there. Now, again, I don't know Jordan Peterson's sort of core philosophy as far as that goes. But
I've read the book and I still don't know what it is.
But the difference between a psychologist in general and a philosopher, I would assume, is that the philosopher's starting from first principles and working out from there. And anything that doesn't conform to those first principles is something you need to criticize or reject and so on. And a psychologist, of course, is starting with a lot of data, a lot of studies, a lot of self-knowledge, and some of it is fairly goopy as a whole.
But you know what? It's. This is going to sound like I'm shitting on the guy, and I love that he exists, but I like Camille Paglia, for instance, who is able to stitch together literary references with psychological insight, with sociology, with political history. She's got one of those minds that can draw from ancient Greece as effortlessly as it draws from, 1960s, second wave radical feminism, and say something interesting with those components. She can remix and reimagine them and present them in a way that, you need to understand all the references, which sometimes is hard work. It seems like she and I have read a lot of the same stuff growing up, maybe, or whatever. So I get most of what she's on about.
Yeah.
And I come away with something. But there are long passages of Jordan Peterson that I just have this sneaking suspicion in the back of my head just don't mean anything.
He would be the guy to ask about this. But
none of his interviewers ever do. They sort of take it for granted that he's some sort of genius. And I'm like, well, he's obviously very smart and he's echoing many of the things that we all believe in and that we all say. But I get this sense that like everyone's terrified to criticize him because he has, he's the new hot thing and he's the new whatever. And I didn't like it when that was happening to me. I was like, sometimes my talks are shit. Like you should say so, But I really phoned that one in. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with this because I've been through it myself. But I watch my college talks back and I'm like, I know what I'm talking about. Like it's coherent.
Yeah.
And I don't always understand what the hell he's saying.
Well, I think so. I think the
rules,
appeal.
There are like 10-page stretches where I just don't know what the fuck he's saying.
I think that the appeal for a lot of people, and you know, he's got a lot of appeal to young men, and young men who've grown up in particular without a father. They're kind of looking for someone to tell them what to do. Now, I have always, in my conversations with people, resolutely avoided telling people what to do, because the whole point of philosophy is you think for yourself from first principles, and you are empowered to make your own decisions. So not telling people what to do.
Psychologists rarely control themselves in that way.
Well, it is very tempting. You know, it's 12 rules. It's things that you should do with your life.
By necessity, prescriptive.
So there is a prescriptive element. Now, there is a thirst for that. And maybe that's a stepping stone to get to really, really thinking for yourself. And I'm not saying he doesn't encourage that, but that's been my sort of thing from the very beginning. Don't tell people what to do. Just give people some ways to think about things.
The rules all basically boil down to be nice. I mean, you know, the 12 all basically boil down to be nice, don't they? I mean, you know, he seems to be advocating for a sort of educated kind of compassion.
Well, be nice is the whole Christian question, right? Is it an eye for an eye, or is it turn the other cheek, right?
And,
right.
You know,
I mean, the be nice
seems very muddled. I'm sorry, but you know, it's like sometimes he'll say, like, you know, whether it's Feuerbach or whatever, and I'll be like, yeah, that's what I read. And sometimes he'll throw a name in, I'm like, don't know where that is, but it just seems a bit muddled.
Yeah,
it's like word salad or something, you know.
This question of being
nice,
it's
so self-contradictory, and like he'll say the opposite thing like 20 pages later, and I don't know whether that's like I don't know whether it's sort of like some kind of unconscious, like, you know, just sort of preternatural genius, you know, idiot savant kind of like stream of consciousness brilliance that maybe I'm just not on the right wavelength for. Or whether it's a hedging technique so we can have it both ways. but I don't know. I don't want to go on about it. We'll move on to other subjects. Let me just say this.
It's
because I've got you in the studio today. I just want to ask somebody who I know will have had some of these questions.
It takes a certain amount of just annoying, frustrating mental rigor to say, I'm not going to contradict myself. Now, again, psychology is not necessarily working from the same first principles. There is a multiplicity of consciousness that is accepted in psychology. Some people call it the internal family systems therapy. Some people call it alter egos. So you can accept that you can have multiple perspectives in psychology, and that's part of your self-knowledge. You know, I both love this person and I don't like this person at the same time. You can have that kind of complexity.
How I feel about Jordan Peterson.
Philosophy doesn't allow you to do that, though. It's like mathematics. You can't contradict yourself. Yes. So I'm just coming from a different place as far as all that goes.
Yeah, I don't know. When he emerges into coherence, I find little to disagree with. But there's so much that is not coherent, and so much that just seems impenetrable, like jargonic to the point of like being indistinguishable from, you know, from Lacan, Derrida, and from, you know, some of the pseudo philosophers of the French tradition who, you know, just there's very little once you unpick all the games, you know.
He's moving. Sorry to interrupt, but he's moving from speaking to students and peers.
It's undergraduates. I mean, I don't.
Oh, you mean the courses that he's given undergraduates?
The way he speaks is surely more understandable to me than it is to some 20-year-old who's never heard any of this stuff before. And I'm not blowing smoke just because you happen to be in studio, but I'd sooner have a teacher. You know, I'd sooner have a teacher I understand than a teacher I don't, even if the teacher I don't was more brilliant. Anyway, I'll move on because I don't want to spend the whole. I don't know what I think about this person because I don't understand enough of what he says, and it's unusual for me to be in that situation because I can read, you know, like I can fight my way through, you know, Kant or whatever, and maybe with some notes and references and someone on the phone and get there, you know, like I'm like, oh, okay, and even if 10 minutes later I've sort of forgotten it and I can't remember what I understood when I read it, like I get there, and I just can't get there with him. Like I just can't.
It is tough because when you
grab hold of him and understand what he's saying at any one moment with any reliability.
When you're smart and educated and you can't understand what someone's saying, it could be because they're a stone genius, or there's an alternative explanation. And I think that's where you're still exploring.
Standard deviation in one or the other direction.
Right.
And that's where we'll leave it.